Everybody, and it is time for the NBA playoffs. No more of this nonsense with long injury reports. No more of players just randomly resting or sitting because it's playoff time. The games matter now. So as you guys come in, do us a favor, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and shout out to So Rare, who is sponsoring our show today. I'm looking forward to our post-lock show because I'm here with Ryan. And after the slate locks, we're going to be doing a little bit of a playoff preview. We're going to be talking about our favorite outlooks for different teams, which teams we like to go deep into the playoffs. We're talking about our favorite studs, some potential value options, ways that you guys could find some players you might want to target over at So Rare. We're talking about more about their platform as we go. But Ryan, what's happening? You looking forward to the NBA playoffs?
Hell yeah, it's the best time of the year. The NBA playoffs is as good as it gets in terms of basketball. And I think in terms of matchups for our first round, especially in the West, you can make an argument 3 out of the 4 matchups we have over there could be conference finals previews as type of environments that were happening. So I'm super stoked for the playoffs. The East has obviously the great teams, and the Bucks, the Sixers, and the Celtics obviously lead the way there. And we have a great 4-game slate. It's the best. Like the opening night of the playoffs is so much fun to watch. It's just a different game environment that's going to go on there. Hopefully, one of the teams can pull off an upset. That always makes for a very intriguing series down the line.
Of today's games, we've got 4 of them. We're going to be going game by game, breaking them all down. We've got the Nets and the Sixers. We've got the Hawks and the Celtics. We've got the Knicks and the Cavs. We've got the Warriors and the Kings. Of these games, Ryan, which one are you looking forward to watching the most?
Oh, Battle of the Bay, Sacramento versus Golden State. Sacramento being back in the playoffs is probably one of the most exciting NBA stories this season. When I was a kid, I was the biggest Peja Stojakovic, Vlade Divac, Bobby Jackson, Hito Turkoglu, Mike Bibby teams fan, and very disappointed when they lost that game against the Lakers. I'm pumped to see them back, taking on kind of a rivalry against Golden State. Golden State, Draymond obviously just saying he wants to play the Kings, obviously for travel purposes, but they're playing with the chip on the shoulder. And we know Sacramento had the best offensive team this season, historically the best offense, I think, in NBA history, which is wild to think about.
Yeah, and might surprise a lot of people. Kings favorite in game 1 over the Warriors. Also, I should mention, Ryan and I, not related. There was some confusion on the show yesterday. Somebody in YouTube chat thought that Neil and I were related and was asking what our relation was. Something I've never gotten asked that question before, and it kind of came out of nowhere. But also should follow up. Neil and I not related. Ryan and I also not related, for anybody who's confused when you look at the two of us. And also, like I mentioned, we're sponsored by So Rare today. If you guys haven't checked out So Rare, it is totally free to sign up. But if you sign up using our link and you decide you want to purchase some player cards over at So Rare, you purchase 5 limited player cards, you get a 6th one totally for free. Now, how So Rare works is a collectible card game that you play fantasy contests with. It's a really fun platform, and some of the prizes go for a lot of money. There was a 1-of-1 Giannis Antetokounmpo that about 6 weeks ago now ended up being won in a contest and sold on the secondary market for nearly $200,000. So there's some really valuable prize to win over at So Rare. And in the post-lock show, Ryan and I are going to be doing a preview of the NBA playoffs, just looking through all the teams and making some predictions. It's going to be fun. So stick around for the post-lock show, you guys. But let's talk about today's slate, starting with the Brooklyn Nets against the Philadelphia 76ers. This is the first game that we have on the slate. And one thing that immediately stands out to me, Ryan, just the pace of play and how it's expected to be different in the playoffs. The total for this game, Nets Sixers, 214. We very seldomly saw totals this low in the NBA regular season. So starting with the Nets side of the game, I think this is the team that's in the toughest spot of any team on the entire slate. What do you make of the Nets and the low total? And do you find it hard to really actively target them?
Yeah, so in terms of looking at game totals, we got to look at it from an era perspective. What are the rest of the slate's game totals? As of the way things stand now, Atlanta and Boston comes in at 231. The highest is the nightcap in Golden State and Sacramento with 237.5. And sandwiched in between that game is the Knicks and Cavs at 217, another slow-paced environment. Yeah, like you said, a 23-point difference is quite a bit in terms of total projections, and a lot can happen in terms of fantasy production in a high total game environment like the nightcap. But this is a slow-paced game environment. So, like you mentioned, they're in a very tough spot. Brooklyn, the one thing about Brooklyn, we can feel confident in their condensed rotation. I mean, I think we might see obviously Joe Harris and Seth Curry, but that's about it. I don't Yuta Watanabe might get a couple minutes, but I don't expect him to be in the playoff rotation. I feel pretty confident in their minutes, and Bridges and Dinwiddie leading the team with usage. but they're priced not the greatest on the slate. Like you said, the total isn't going for them, and it's a tough Philly spot. And I, looking at the series, I mean, I think consensus has Philly like potentially in a sweep or 4 or 5 games. Can Brooklyn squeak out a game? Sure. But I just only feel confident maybe sprinkling in some Dinwiddie and some Bridges. Everyone else, I'm just not that too excited to go to. Like Dorian Finney-Smith and Royce O'Neal, that's a little too gross for my liking.
And there's a lot of ownership here, which is what's really surprising to me. If you look at some of these Nets pieces, we've got guys on this team projected for a significant amount of ownership. We've got Dinwiddie at $7,600. I know that the assist numbers were massive for him down the stretch of the season. A little bit different when he's putting up, 16 assists against the Detroit Pistons in a meaningless regular season game when the Pistons are actively tanking versus now going on the road against Philadelphia 76ers and the total being so low. But still, we see the field is rostering some of these Brooklyn players, 33% for Dinwiddie. The one that shocks me the most, Royce O'Neal is projected for 23% ownership on DraftKings. So he's one of the more popular mid-range options on all of DraftKings. And then for FanDuel purposes, Royce O'Neal also projected for some ownership, currently at 12% projected over on FanDuel. So I ran some lineups and I got to a minimal amount of Royce O'Neal at first. But considering he's popular on DraftKings, I consider him to be a bad piece of chalk. Do you view it the same way when it comes to Royce O'Neal and him being projected for north of 20% ownership?
Yeah, I'm looking look elsewhere. I mean, Royce O'Neal, obviously, you're really hoping for him to knock down 4 or 5 threes, grab an outlier rebound percentage, rebounding game from him. It's just there's just so many better options at that type of ownership in a playoff situation. I'm not that. That's a little too high for me. I'm willing to get way under the field or just if he burns me, if Royce O'Neal burns me on opening night of playoffs, so be it. I'm just not about that.
Yeah, I think we're on the same page there. If Royce O'Neal was projected for like 5% ownership and I got him in a lineup here or there, cool. It wouldn't be a big deal to me. But the idea that he's priced somewhat aggressively and is really popular on DraftKings, I ended up taking him out of my player pool. Well, I think I'm going to take him out of my player pool just to prevent the amount of exposure that I'm going to be getting to him. Are there any sleeper options, anybody you view as being a low-owned tournament option from the Nets that we could look at for today?
Yeah, on the FanDuel side of things, just because of like the way power forward is set up, getting to some Cam Johnson's completely fine. I mean, he comes in at a 5,800 price tag. I know that's expensive for Cam Johnson. I expect the minutes to be at least in the low 30s anyway, up to the high 30s in this playoff situation. One thing to keep in mind on playoff rotations is obviously you can expect like maybe from what I was looking at, maybe around a 10 to 15% uptick in minutes for some of the main rotation players as the series progresses. Not maybe in game one, as the series progresses, those minutes could go up. And sometimes I have noticed now usage to go up for like your high usage players, that being like your Embiid or potentially maybe Dinwiddie and Bridges might get a little bit more usage as playoff basketball gets a little bit more isolation than most. So that's one thing to keep an eye on. And a lot of the stuff that we saw in the regular season will matter, but you'll see it can pretty much get thrown out the wayside. I think like the playoffs is a completely different way to look at minutes projections and rotations. So game one's going to be interesting. So I feel confident in those type of guys. And another guy is Nick Claxton. He's had some big games against Embiid here and there. He had one big game, but that matchup against Embiid really scares me. Like $8,000 on FanDuel is a hefty price tag, and Joel Embiid is just going to be front forcing his way there. Foul trouble is written all over Nick Claxton at that price tag as well. So there's much better center options than him. So if you get some Claxton, sure, it's not. No one really on the Nets is a priority. It's just a really tough, low game total. I certainly think one of them can have a tournament winning performance, but nothing too exciting from this Nets team.
Yeah, so we'll talk about the 76ers side into what you said before, and us talking about the total. By far, the Nets have the lowest implied team total in the entire slate because the Sixers are 8-point favorites, and this game only is a 214 total. So the second expected lowest scoring team is the Knicks, but that game, the Knicks are only 5-point underdogs, and the total is 217 as opposed to 214. So the Knicks are expected to score 6 more points than the Nets. But let's talk about the Philadelphia 76ers. And right away, I have to tell you something that just absolutely scares the shit out of me as far as this slate goes, Ryan. There's not that much value. It is hard to get up to the studs. And it's not hard to envision a scenario where Joel Embiid has a massive ceiling game in this spot. But when I'm building lineups out, I didn't get to him a lot on DraftKings. I've got him in 15% of my lineups on FanDuel that I've built. Is it a mistake to not go heavier on Embiid? Because to me, the biggest issue I'm having with him, it's not Embiid himself. It's just the opportunity cost of spending all the way up at center. So how do you view Joel Embiid today?
Yeah, going all the way up to 11-8 to Joel Embiid. Can Embiid put up a 70 spot against this Brooklyn Nets team? He sure can. But like you said, there's not that much sub 4K value. And on a slate like this, where Embiid can really make your lineup fit over there on FanDuel, is like finding the outlier Nickeil Alexander-Walker game, outlier Max Strus game. And it's trying to pinpoint those guys is what makes DFS is so fun, just trying to land on those type of players. But Embiid at that price tag, I mean, it's tough. 11-2 on DraftKings where you roster two seems a lot more feasible than going on FanDuel when you get spend down a little bit when there's like a Sabonis in cheaper than him. So I think it's more likely I go to Embiid a little bit more on DraftKings than I would on FanDuel, but he's by no means like with like the lack of like extremely good sub cheap value. It's not kind of a lock and load play where Embiid certainly on slates where there's good value. It's pretty much easy to get to Embiid on a playoff slate like this where bunch of other guys look really good. I can't advocate for that same feeling.
Yeah, and once again, Embiid could have a big game, and it's not because I'm saying he's not going to be good today or anything like that. It's just the opportunity cost. It's hard to find cheap guys we really like. If you're playing on FanDuel, you only have access to one center you could play in your lineup, and then on DraftKings, a little more flexibility because we got the utility spot. You could play two centers, but still, I'm finding it a little bit difficult to jam in Joel Embiid. As a result, I'm getting to a little bit more of James Harden, which at least from a strategy standpoint, I do like that. Like, all right, if I don't have a ton of Embiid, at least if I have a good amount of shares of Harden, it's not crazy unrealistic to think if Harden has a big game, it could in some ways come at the expense of Joel Embiid. So Harden is my preferred stud in this game. And also a little bit cheaper than we normally see. James Harden is $9,300 over on DraftKings, which is a pretty reasonable price tag. If you look at James Harden over on FanDuel, slightly more expensive at $9,600, but still, you're getting James Harden well below the 10K price tag, multi-position eligibility. Is James Harden somebody you like paying up for on this slate?
Yeah, I'm always on team James Harden. I know the narrative between playoff James Harden, but at this price tag, 9.3, he has triple-double upside. I mean, I'm about to expect high 30s minutes at that price tag, the upside for Harden to put up 50 plus fantasy points is certainly on the table. And the way things stand right now, James Harden's probably going to be one of my highest owned players across the board. So I like going to James Harden in significant fashion. If I were to pick one sixer to play, it's going to be Harden over Embiid right now, just because of salary, the way the position works out. So that's kind of how I'm landing right now with James Harden. So I like getting to him quite a bit. Even our just looking at our Stokastic projections, we're getting to some Harden. If like running the first top 50 optimal, we're getting around 10% Harden. But I think certainly Harden has a serious upside in this spot. Definitely like getting to him, getting above the field on a guy like James Harden for sure.
Yeah, and if you guys want access to any of those projections that Ryan just referenced there, if you use the link below and you haven't signed up for a Stokastic package yet, 50% off. And that could be applied to any package you want. If you're just going to be playing basketball, sign up for a basketball package, get 50% off. You could sign up for our lineup generator, which is going to be super useful for the playoffs, especially you don't have to worry about players getting injured and late swapping and all of that. Lineup generator, it's going to be the easiest way for you guys to have lineups built pretty much for you. You're going to have some inputs of your own. Or if you want a platinum package that includes basketball, it includes baseball, it includes USFL, which is starting today. I don't know if you knew this, Neil, but USFL, it's even different than XFL.
I'm not Neil.
Yeah, I was doing a show with Neil last night, and I was trying to figure out if he was willing to cheat on XFL to go into USFL, because he's one of not only is he apparently related to me, but another fun fact about Neil is that he's the world's biggest XFL fan. He's got a lot of XFL apparel. So he was unsure if he was going to get into USFL and cheat on XFL, but if I know Neil, he's going to end up playing it. But all this is covered in our Stokastic Plus Platinum package, and you get access to it for 50% off when you sign up using the link that we have below. And one other thing I want to ask you before we talk about some of the role players on the Sixers, are there any rules that you're setting for this slate to limit the amount of players that you're getting from individual teams?
No, I usually don't do that. That's something I plan on studying this off season. of play team caps. I usually don't bother as much if I land on 3 or 4 because it comes down to which 3 are in your lineup, which what their salary is. There's certainly some rules. I think you can make some group pairings in terms of not having 2 of these guys, but in terms of rules like that, no, I'm willing to let my process spit out whatever it needs to spit out. So I'm okay to getting to 3 guys. Usually, I think I organically you're going to get around 3 guys for some of your lineups for sure. So that's kind of how things stand right now for me.
Yeah, and the team that I currently have the most 3-man stacks of, so just the most lineups, 3-man from any team, it is the Boston Celtics. And we'll be talking about them in a little bit. Now, we talked about James Harden. We talked about Joel Embiid. Are there any role players that are standing out to you from the Sixers?
No, it's really difficult to go to any of these role players. Like, let's chat about them. PJ Tucker, no thanks. Definitely not happening with PJ Tucker. And then D'Anthony Melton would be one guy who on FanDuel, because he racks up the steals in a flurry, he can be one guy you want to get to, but he's 4,500. So no real role players. Tobias Harris, 5,900. You really are hoping for a lot of points because that's kind of all he does now. He's just like a spot up, catch and shoot if he's open off of dishes from Embiid or Harden type of guy. You really aren't getting that many assists from him. You'll maybe get some rebounds, but the one thing that will be going for him, expect around mid 30s minutes, high 30s minutes if this game is close. So it's kind of a more of a minutes play. It's power forward only now on FanDuel, so that makes things even more difficult to him. Over there in DraftKings, you can certainly get to some of him. He's at 6,000 small forward, power forward. So it's a little better play in terms of like price perspective on FanDuel, but he's not that exciting. And everyone else, right? It's just not enough minutes and usage. When you're sharing the court with Harden and Embiid and Maxey, you're just not going to get enough shots up to really matter, in my opinion.
Nope, totally makes sense. I don't have exposure to, let me double check this. And yeah, I don't have any kind of significant exposure to any players on the 76ers other than some Harden, some Embiid. I don't have any of these role players, really any kind of real amount that's worth talking about. So I think we're done talking about the Sixers here, but let's hit on some of your guys' super chats. I see some of the questions here, starting with Relaxed Carl, 813. So Relaxed Carl, 812 was already taken. So we got Relaxed Carl, 813 here. He's saying, let's go. No question, just saying, let's go. Carl, we appreciate you. And yeah, let's go. I'm excited for the playoffs to be starting. The next super chat here is from Ace of Spade. He wants to know my favorite options for DK tiers. This is the normal question that we end up seeing from Ace of Spade, and I've got you covered. I got my lineups built right here. These are players I got the most exposure to in each tier. Tier 1, Joel Embiid. I think this is by far the best spot that you're going to be getting exposure to Joel Embiid in. So tier 1, Embiid. Tier 2 for me, very, very close between Donovan Mitchell and Trae Young. I do have slightly more Donovan Mitchell there. Tier 3, James Harden for me. Tier 4, Darius Garland edging out Evan Mobley is the player I got the most exposure to. Tier 5, Klay Thompson. And then tier 6, there's a lot of good options in tier 6. Clint Capella, Cam Johnson, Marcus Smart, Malcolm Brogdon. I don't think there's a lot that separates these guys, but Capella is the one that I got the most exposure to. Kind of interesting spot here for Capella heading into the playoffs. I think there's an opportunity for him to play a couple extra minutes. I don't know that for sure, that we could go right back to just splitting minutes with Okongwu, but maybe we see a couple extra minutes out of Clint Capella, and that does make him stand out a little bit more in tier 6. The next super chat we have here is from Man EC, and it says, shout out to Josh's dad, Terry. Yeah, well, actually, Terry is Josh's uncle. So you've got the relations a little bit confused there. But yeah, shout out to Josh's uncle, Terry. So that handles all of the super chats we have. If you guys have any more of them, throw them in. Or if you have questions for us in Discord, at me, and we could answer those questions as we go. It is one of the perks of being a Stokastic Plus Platinum member. Next game on the slate to talk about, it is the Atlanta Hawks against the Boston Celtics. And I have a lot of exposure to the Celtics. We'll be talking about them in a second. From the Hawks side of the game, though, one of my least favorite teams to target today. I got to some of DeJounte Murray on FanDuel, not as much on DraftKings. Trae Young was kind of an odd man left out for me. Is there anything that stands out to you about the Hawks for today?
Yeah, so the Hawks, it comes down to like a site-specific type of play here for the Hawks, I think. On FanDuel, I think some of the Hawks look pretty appealing. Let's say DeAndre Hunter and DeJounte Murray at those price tags. I certainly don't mind getting to a fair share of them. But that's really about it. I think that Trae Young is kind of getting priced out. Like, I prefer Harden to him pretty much almost straight up. the way things stand right now. But we know Trae Young's upside of just getting that 3-point bonus on DraftKings. You can certainly find a way to pay off a $9,600 price tag. DraftKings is a little different story. They're all priced up to the point where they're too expensive in this Boston spot where I'm not getting much. But the one thing that's also going for them is they're going to be low owned. And when that happens on a 4-game slate, where the minutes are all going to be at least in the mid-30s, I feel confident that Young and Murray and DeAndre Hunter will play around 30-plus minutes. Where things get tricky is Jalen Johnson was dusted off last game. And now he played 14 minutes, and he was almost the reason why the second unit was pulling away from Miami and why they are playing Boston and not Milwaukee. Is I think Jalen Johnson was exceptionally good. Quinn Snyder drew up an excellent game plan for him. So keep in mind, Atlanta, I think, played majority of the games against Boston with Nate McMillan. And then the final game of the season, they played against Boston. It was kind of like a G League showcase. So this Atlanta team is not something that I'm getting heavily to, but they're coming in low owned. And I think certainly some of these guys have tournament winning upside because they're going to play a ton of minutes, but it's a very, very tough Boston spot.
So I'll phrase the question this way then. If somebody held a gun to your head and for whatever reason said, listen, Ryan, the only way to get out of this situation is you have to tell me who the number one best Hawks player is to target in large field tournaments today, who would you tell them? If you had to roster one Atlanta Hawk and it could only be one, who would be the one guy that you would target for DraftKings and the one for FanDuel?
DeJounte Murray on both sides. I know he's not getting much ownership. 8,700 Murray seems expensive, but DeJounte Murray has had playoff experience. I expect the minutes to be around 37. He's one of those guys. I know he doesn't rebound as effectively as he was in San Antonio, and also doesn't pass as much just because he's not the lead ball handling guy. But I just like the minutes. I think that ownership is going to be super low, where he has the upside of putting up 45, 50 fantasy points. We've seen that happen time and time again. I know we like going to Murray when Trae Young is out, but DeJounte Murray still has that in his bag. So I like going to DeJounte Murray on both sides just because of the ownership. I think guy like DeJounte Murray to have that upside at the projected ownership we have right now, give me DeJounte Murray to get above the field.
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense. And that would be my answer as well, particularly for FanDuel. I think that he is actually one of the better shooting guard eligible players that we have over on FD. And kind of interesting question here that before we wrap up the Hawks, I think is worth talking about. James Perkins, who, by the way, is the same person yesterday who thought that Neil and I were related and then found out after the fact wasn't the case. He wants to know, will Jalen Johnson play more than 14 minutes today? It's hard for me to expect extended minutes from Jalen Johnson, but I think he's more likely to be in the rotation than not. What do you think is a realistic minutes expectation for Jalen Johnson?
I think around anywhere from 12 to 16 minutes seems appropriate. Keep in mind, DeAndre Hunter got in serious foul trouble. Sadiq Bey was getting a lot of those minutes, but John Collins just might not be Quinn Snyder's favorite type of guy to go to. So Jalen Johnson benefits if John Collins doesn't play. I think I don't think I would roster both in my lineup, but yeah, I think 12 to 16. I think he's going to have some ownership just because of how well he's been playing in terms of like box score watching. But I don't mind going to him if you land on one. Now, if John Collins is like somehow falls out of the rotation, there's a non-zero chance that could happen. Jalen Johnson's going to play a lot more minutes. I just don't think that's going to happen in game one.
Is John Collins anybody's favorite? Because it seems every year we get to the trade deadline, it's like, oh, John Collins, locker room issue. He's on the trade block. And then every coach, it's like, oh, Nate McMillan didn't like him. Oh, here comes Quinn Snyder. Maybe Quinn Snyder will like him. It seems that every single year, there are always these concerns that mount about John Collins over the course of the season. Now, at least in the past, he'd always been a pretty good fantasy producer. This year, though, not quite so much the case. But we could get past the Atlanta Hawks. It's one of my least interesting teams to target for the entire slate. On the other hand, I love the Boston Celtics. I think the Celtics are a team that is really difficult to avoid because while a lot of teams are priced up heading into the playoffs, Ryan, the Celtics are not, particularly some of the role players that expect to play limited minutes. One of my favorite plays on the entire slate is Robert Williams, because Williams is priced down based on some of the minutes that he played in the last month or so. But if you look at the final 2 games of the regular season, it looks like Boston was ramping up Time Lord for the playoffs. Against the Toronto Raptors, 31 minutes. That was the most he had played in a very long time. And then he follows it up with 25 minutes, another game against the Raptors. I think we're seeing a totally unrestricted Robert Williams heading into the playoffs, and he's just not priced that way. I like getting the Time Lord. Are you on the same page as me?
Yeah, let's. I'm all about Rob Williams tonight. I'm excited to go to Robert Williams on Yahoo. Looks outstanding. He comes in at $18 over there, 6,000 on FanDuel. Where on both FanDuel and Yahoo, you get rewarded for those blocks, and he can have 5 block games in an Atlanta game environment. I think it suits up well for him. So I like going to Robert Williams quite a bit, getting above the field on Rob Williams today, and then. I think going to Robert Williams on DraftKings seems nice as well. Where things get tricky is, I was going to ask you, Greg, with the Horford and Robert Williams, how many minutes do you think they might have to share on the court together?
Yeah, so the good thing is that we've seen this in previous years, right? We've seen Horford and Robert Williams both healthy. We've hardly seen it at all this season, but I do think we could go back to last year, particularly what happened at the start of the year. And I think we feel pretty good about saying that they both have potential to play 30 plus minutes today. Not necessarily as a lock, but I think it has potential to happen because at the start of last year, there were times where we saw Robert Williams and we saw Al Horford share the court together and both play extended minutes. And I just don't think this team is as committed to Grant Williams this year as they were last year in the playoffs, where Williams was playing a lot of games with big minutes. I don't think Grant Williams plays the same role this season. So with that in mind, I don't have an issue with, I'm not going to go out and just project Robert Williams for north of 30 minutes because you get him in 100% of lineups if you start to do that. But I don't think it's unreasonable to go like 30 minutes for Al Horford, 28 for Robert Williams, with the potential for them to both exceed those playing time projections.
No, I think that's a great way to put it. Yeah, I like going to Robert Williams just because I think the upside of him playing those minutes are certainly on the table. I just don't say, I think models across the board projection minutes are not projecting him appropriately, and I'm willing to take that risk, especially in game one. And he has serious upside. Like we said, the reasons why I'm not getting much of Embiid is for guys like Robert Williams are popping up in significant fashion. So that's kind of the reason why I'm with you, Greg. I think Rob Williams looks like an awesome play. Time Lord hopefully can find a way to pay off for us.
And I'm seeing some pushback against this in the chat, which I understand being a little skeptical of Robert Williams' minutes and the idea of, do they really want to run him into the ground in game one of the postseason? He played 31 minutes 2 games ago. If they're willing to do it in a meaningless regular season game, why would they not be willing to do it in the playoffs? Right? I mean, he started the last 2 games. He had not started since March 3rd. So they went a month with him missing games, him coming off the bench, playing limited minutes. I look at that game where he played 31 minutes against the Raptors as the ramp up for the playoffs. I think that's where we started to see them really show off the kind of minutes. It doesn't make sense to me, once again, they would give him those kind of minutes for a meaningless regular season game and not be willing to give him those minutes in the playoffs. I would be a lot more skeptical if we had not seen those games where he played bigger minutes down the stretch of the regular season. So that's why I'm going to be a little more bullish on Robert Williams' minutes. I'm going to play a lot of him in DFS today. If he ends up playing 22 minutes and doesn't get the minutes that I expect, then I'm kind of screwed today. But I'm comfortable taking that kind of stance. Do you have any issue playing lineups that have Time Lord and Al Horford together?
Yeah, that's the situation I'm working through right now. And I'm just trying to think, how many minutes can they realistically share on the court together is where things get really tricky. There is obviously a chance they don't share the court together at all, right? But I think they can certainly play some minutes together. I think I'm okay with it, but I'm going to have to proceed with a little bit of caution there. I definitely think they could limit each other's upside, but I think the minutes work out in both of their favors where it could certainly work out. Yeah, I think I'm okay with it. Now that I think a little bit more hard about it, I'm getting to some of them together on FanDuel. DraftKings as well. So, yeah, I think I'm fine to do so. On Yahoo, it's not really working out like that, but yeah, getting to some is okay. Nothing too much. I wouldn't get like a lot of lineups with them together just because I think there are multiple. You can make really good lineups without having both of them in your lineup.
And one thing I'm going to add to that, I think they both start today. Which, yeah, if they're both starting, I think that should alleviate some concerns about how many minutes they play. Now, if the starting lineup comes out and it is Derek White back in the starting lineup and Robert Williams coming off the bench, I'm going to have to change my tune and lower my exposure to Robert Williams. But I'm currently expecting a starting lineup for Boston to be Marcus Smart, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, Al Horford, and Robert Williams. That's my expectation as of now.
Yeah, to be honest, I think it's a complete toss-up. It could go either way. So I would alert the audience to be prepared for one or the other. I feel confident it's going to be one or the other, but a lot of things can. Yeah, it's going to be one or the other. It's a very tricky situation there. If Robert Williams doesn't start, I'll still play him, but I think I'll drop my ownership just a tad, just because I think the minutes upside of potentially playing 34, it's more like he plays 28 type of situation if he doesn't start, I feel like. But it's such a good spot for him. The upside is certainly on the table for him to pay off. So I don't want to miss out on the Rob Williams game, even if he doesn't start.
And let's round out talking about the rest of the Celtics. The ones that stand out the most to me are Al Horford and Robert Williams in particular. As for the rest of the Boston Celtics, who else stands out to you?
Yeah, I like going to Marcus Smart. I know that's going to sound disgusting. I like going to him on FanDuel. I prefer Marcus Smart might be the first Celtic I want to roster in a lineup if I was building one on FanDuel. I like getting to him quite a bit. And then Jaylen Brown as well. I think both of those guys grade out a little bit better for me today, the way things pricing stands out in positions on FanDuel. Over there on DraftKings, kind of the similar sentiment, but we got to keep in mind Jason Tatum's upside. He could put up 60 against this Atlanta team and no worries. So I think over there on DraftKings, I got to really look at that starting lineup because if Derek White were to start, I really like going to Derek White at 5,500 over there. I'm getting to some of him already as is. So it's something that starting lineup is going to really dictate how much more of Derek White I'd get. And Robert Williams on DraftKings looks outstanding. But it's more of a FanDuel. FanDuel, the Celtics grade out much better than they do on DraftKings for me right now.
Yep, totally makes sense. And it's funny, I get a lot of exposure to the Celtics, but it's not as much of the Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. It's Robert Williams, Al Horford, Marcus Smart, Derek White, more of the role players. And a lot of it just has to do with pricing. Is there anything else you want to add about the Boston Celtics? If not, we'll take a look at some of our favorite bets for today.
Yeah, keep an eye on that starting lineup. And that will really help dictate what the minutes look like, especially backcourt and front court. So I know that's the second game, so we'll definitely get the starting lineup. But I think Greg brought up a good point. There's a really good chance both Horford and Williams start, but the other lineup, like you said, Derek White could enter the starting lineup. So we'll see what Joe Mazzulla ends up deciding to do against Quinn Snyder.
Yeah, and if you guys stick around for the post-lock show, I think there's a pretty good chance that's going to be the time frame we get that lineup in. So we've got a little bit of time until that game starts. I think there's a good chance that during that post-lock show, we'll find out the Celtics starting five. Now let's look at some bets for today. And I've got BetPro open right now on my computer. If you guys haven't checked out BetPro, we've got baseball added to this as well. It's not just basketball. It's also got baseball, and these are all included in the same package. These are not separate things. If you guys sign up for BetPro, you're getting NBA and MLB bets. And if you haven't tried it out yet, use the link below. 7 days totally for free. And here's what I think is going to happen in those 7 days. I think you're going to make some money, and then the tool's just going to pay for itself. So your free trial is going to run up, but you made some money on that time frame, and you're going to be able to pay for the tool just with the money that you made during the free trial. So no risk to yourself at all. Try out our tools with the free trial for BetPro, and I think you're going to like it. Brian, do you have any bets you've placed today or anything that immediately stands out to you? If not, I could start us off here.
Yeah, if you could start us off. I have not placed any bets yet. The one bet I will be placing in the playoffs is Phoenix Suns to win in 4 games. I'll be doing that tomorrow, but nice. I do have some Suns futures lined up.
Myself as well.
Yeah, this Suns team is really, really good. So we'll see. We'll talk about the Suns whenever we do have a Suns slate. But yeah, in terms of bets, let me pull up OddsShopper. I think there's some great prop options to take some advantages on.
So one thing that stands out to me that I think the market's a little bit too high on Jonathan Kuminga. And even though Andrew Wiggins is going to be playing limited minutes today, we still have to consider that Wiggins playing, those minutes are coming directly from Jonathan Kuminga. He's not going to be getting the same kind of run now that he was in the last couple of weeks. And that's just not really reflected in his odds. So We've got Kuminga projected for less than 3 rebounds today. His over-under for rebounds is 3.5. That's one of the first bets I placed today. It's one of my favorite things on the board. I like Jonathan Kuminga for under 3.5 rebounds, with some of his playing time just starting to be taken away from Wiggins. But what's standing out to you now?
Yeah, I'm gonna ride with our odd shopper team here. And as gross as it sounds, let's take the over on PJ Tucker's 3.5 points on PointsBet. I know that sounds awful, but for PJ Tucker to do that he's got to hit 2 threes, and he's got to stand in the corner and knock them both down. And right now, that's coming in at minus 115. That's grading out as the best bet on the board right now at PointsBet. So I'm going to ride with the team. Let's go PJ Tucker over 3.5 points, as gross as that sounds, but let's trust the data here.
All right. So there's a couple of bets for you guys, and check out all our tools. We got links for it below. We've got free trials available. No risk to you at all. So good thing to try out and see if you make money using it. I think you're going to, and I think you're going to be using our tools for the long haul. Now let's look at the other couple of games on the slate. The next one, the New York Knicks at the Cleveland Cavaliers. Now, this is an actual injury situation we have to talk about here, because Julius Randle has a sprained ankle. He's officially listed as questionable. I do expect him to play, but I'm not 100% confident in it. What is your confidence level that we see Randle starting for the Knicks?
Man, Tom Thibodeau is probably in that locker room. Julius, you probably got to play today. I think he's going to play. Now, Woj had a tweet earlier in the week. They're targeting a game 1 return. The Knicks need Julius Randle. Obi Toppin's not going to be the savior for this Knicks team. It's all going to be on relying on Julius Randle. He was having an all-NBA-esque season. I wonder if that injury knocked him out of it. He was really good. It was like channeling his Julius Randle from 2 years ago when they made the playoffs and played the Hawks in the first round. But I think Julius Randle's going to play. If he doesn't play, that's going to be a huge, huge late swap opportunity for us, where guys like Brunson, Toppin, RJ Barrett will all look really good. And it's something to keep an eye on. I already like Brunson as is. And if Julius Randle is going to play, he's coming off like a pretty severe ankle injury, a high ankle sprain for a guy of his size. It's not easy to come back. If there was no postseason, there could be some sort of surgery lined up. I think it was a pretty devastating injury, but I think he's going to gut it out and try to get out there. If Randle plays, he's going to soak up some usage, but I just don't know what the minutes look like coming back from a lower body injury like that, what that conditioning looks like. I am very skeptical on his fantasy production, which is going to limit the other guys' upside if he's going to be on the court. So the Knicks team in general, outside of Brunson, I'm not that excited to go to. It makes for a very tricky late swap situation if he is going to be out, though.
Yeah, if Randle's out, I'll definitely be swapping on to guys. Beyond that, though, Brunson's 87 on FanDuel. He's north of 9K over on DraftKings. Barrett is 6,200 on DraftKings. RJ Barrett is $8,200 on DraftKings, and $8,200 is not a playable price point for RJ Barrett on DraftKings if we see Randle in there. So I don't know why these Knicks players are priced so aggressively on DK, but it makes them extremely difficult to roster. There's some consideration on FanDuel for, like Quentin Grimes for a cheap option. But beyond that, Knicks just not a great team to get to. Are there any contrarian options you see that stand out for New York?
On the Knicks side of things, I mean, no real contrarian options. I think getting to Brunson might be contrarian as is, but that's expensive to go to Brunson. And if for some reason Julius Randle is fully healthy and good to go, he's going to be contrarian. I just think the field probably thinks like how we're thinking, that he's probably going to be limited in some sort of fashion. 9,700, tough, very tough Cleveland front court to go up against. But it's Julius Randle. He did put up a 60-piece against them in January. So he's had the upside to battling against the Cleveland front court in the past. But this Knicks team is very expensive and a very, very tough defense against Cleveland. So even they might be contrarian, they might all have an upside, but very unlikely that I would get to them in significant fashion. Might be coming out under the field, and a lot of those guys. It'll be a different story if Randle's out, though. I think that would change the whole landscape of the slate, landscape of this team, where they'll become quite a bit of a priority based on their price tags.
And on the other side of the game, when it comes to the Cleveland Cavaliers, particularly on DraftKings, there's a ton of ownership going to Isaac Okoro. And we've got a question about this in our Discord channel from Mincash Merchant. He's asking, is it crazy to fade Okoro in a really small field single entry tournament? I don't think it's crazy to fade Isaac Okoro. It's really funny. because this is where things are different, regular season versus postseason, where the last couple of weeks, we're getting asked questions. Is it crazy to fade a guy who we've never heard of before those couple of weeks? You're just getting crazy guys at the end of the bench, or guys who are in the G League or on 10-day contracts that are all of a sudden projected to play 40 minutes per game. And we got all those weird values. For today now, with everybody active, it's so hard to find value. As a result, you got Isaac Okoro projected to be north of 50% over on DraftKings. I don't even have him projected that well. Right around 14 fantasy points, and he still lands in a bunch of lineups because where else are you getting your salary savings from? So I don't feel great about it, but I understand why Isaac Okoro is chalk, and I'm getting to him. What do you make of him being so popular on DraftKings?
Yeah, we're in the nature of the Opto Bro and the Sim Bro era of DFS, where Isaac Okoro is just blowing out ownership projection models across the board. If I'm playing one lineup, I'm not playing Isaac Okoro. I just can't do it. I think it's just like, we know what he is, right? In a playoff setting, if Isaac Okoro is going to be that type of guy, he's just not him. Isaac Okoro is not about that. He doesn't take enough shots. You're hoping that he plays 30 minutes, he could get rebounds and steals. But, man, if Isaac Okoro is 10 points from Isaac Okoro, that's certainly on the table for him. I think it's more likely he gets 10 than he gets 20. That's just who Isaac Okoro is. I don't think 10 points is going to cut it on a 4-game slate. And that's what, if people are going to Isaac Okoro on the slate, I'm just going to look elsewhere. I just can't push for that type of player above the field. There's such limited upside. He just makes all the studs fit. And like, let's compare like other sub 4K players on the slate who might have a higher upside than him if they were going to get minutes. It's just not many options, right? Because he's 3,200 and he's as cheap as it gets. He's the cheapest rotational player on this slate. So that's probably why he's getting that much ownership. But in terms of roster construction, we can get super, like, if he fails, which certainly is on the table, you can get great roster construction still without him in your lineup, I think.
Yeah, and you just go more balanced, right? I think where a lot of people are rostering Isaac Okoro is to pay up for some studs because there's a lack of value on the slate. If you go more balanced, he becomes a little bit less necessary for those lineups. Got a super chat from Leroy Jenkins. He wants to know who are the 3 best leverage plays on DraftKings. So I'm pulling up our boom bust tool here. I'll look at who's really positively leveraged, and the options aren't great looking. I'll leave it that way, to say the least. But here are a couple that at least stand out to me. One is Kevin Huerter, who's projected for a good amount of ownership, but we actually have him being optimal 58% of the time in our projection. So I know he's already a popular play, but based on our ownership, he should be even more popular. I like Karis LeVert as a pivot off of Isaac Okoro. If you're asking me actual leverage, it's playing Karis LeVert instead of Okoro, because that's where Okoro's minutes are going to go to. If he doesn't get them, it would be going to Karis LeVert. Who would you call a favorite leverage play for you on today's DK slate?
Overall, like from any team?
Yes.
Oof. Jared Allen.
Okay.
I really like going to Jared Allen. I think it sets up for a good spot for him. He's going to play a little bit more minutes than we're used to seeing him play. So I like going to Jared Allen. I think that's certainly a solid option to go to. I think I like going to him at 6,600 on DraftKings. Yeah.
Okay. So we've got some leverage options there, Leroy. I hope it helps you build out your lineups. So we talked about Okoro and all the chalk going to him. You just talked about liking Jared Allen as a leverage option. What else is standing out to you about the Cleveland Cavaliers? Who are you looking to target?
We know the upside Donovan Mitchell can bring to the table. He's been kind of disappointing in the playoffs outside of like that rookie season when he like shocked the Thunder. Mitchell's 9,800. It's expensive for me, so I'm not too excited to go there. I think Darius Garland, where you get the 3-point upside at 7,700, seems like a solid balance option to go to. But it's I like Allen and Garland a lot more than I do Mobley and Mitchell, just because of price tag and ownership. And I feel like they certainly have the upside where it matters for tournaments. That's how I feel about Cleveland team. You brought up Karis LeVert. I think he makes a very strong, like you said, leverage option. 5,700 seems appropriately priced. He's not too expensive. You're really hoping that he has an outlier usage game and is very efficient. Can LeVert do that? Sure. The minutes are just sometimes not the greatest. He's been playing 30 minutes more, a little bit more consistently down the stretch here. But then again, sharing the court with Garland and Mitchell, he's kind of playing third fiddle to them in terms of usage.
Yeah, and my main reason for liking LeVert in tournaments has less to do with LeVert and more to do with all of the ownership on Okoro. And it's like, all right, if Okoro fails, I think it probably means LeVert played really well, or maybe LeVert got some of Okoro's minutes. So that's where he kind of stands out to me, is some of that leverage that we're getting there off of Isaac Okoro. It's hard to find value on this slate, and I do see a path where Okoro fails and LeVert has a good game. Is there anything else you want to add about the Cavs? If not, we could move on to what I consider and you consider to be the best game of the day.
No real thing on the Cavs. I think they make for a very appealing tournament team, just because they're not getting that much ownership. And I think you certainly can get above the field on a couple of those guys because of their upside they bring, especially kind of their big four they have in Mobley, Mitchell, Garland, and Jared Allen.
All right, so let's talk about the Golden State Warriors against the Sacramento Kings. Of all the games on today's slate, the highest total by a pretty wide margin is coming in this game, 237.5. The Kings actually slight betting favorites, favored by a point over the Golden State Warriors. The Warriors have had the road struggles this year, Ryan. And this is a game, though, where we're expecting to be a lot of pace. It should be a lot of fantasy points scored. I'm getting some exposure to the Warriors. The inclusion of Andrew Wiggins back into the team does mix this up a little bit. But when we look at the Warriors, one thing that I like a lot, I'm not going to make you say it. I'm going to say it, and then people get mad at me. I like Draymond Green a lot today. Draymond Green, at his price point in the mid-range, he's somebody with triple-double upside. He's also, for DraftKings purposes, you get the triple-double upside. For FanDuel purposes, getting the extra defensive stats. Draymond Green is better than people give him credit for at this point in his career. He's not going to be somebody that scores a lot of points, but defensive stats, rebounds, assists, he could fill up the box score in multiple ways, really up-pace matchup against the Kings. Am I crazy for having Draymond as one of my most rostered players?
Oh, no, not at all. Draymond Green right now is my most rostered player on FanDuel. Nice. I think Draymond Green is built for playoff environment. And especially this Kings matchup, up and down in game environment, Draymond Green, we know he has triple-double upside. We haven't seen this happen. He's obviously on the tail end of his prime. He's still a solid above average defender. Those defensive player of the year, like Draymond Green, has certainly passed him. But it's Draymond Green. I expect the minutes to be mid to high 30s. I think it's a great game environment for him. He's going to be needed to sometimes contain Domantas Sabonis on the non-Looney minutes. Green can certainly have some minutes at the 5 here. I like going to Green, and he wanted this matchup. And Draymond Green gets up for the playoffs. He's a much different player in the playoffs than he's in the regular season. He vocally says this. It's hard for this Warriors team to get up for every single regular season game because they've had so much success over the last 10 years. It's playoffs for them. They're built for it. I love Draymond Green. If I was building one DraftKings lineup, I think I get to Draymond Green today. He looks outstanding across the board. Probably my favorite player to go to on this slate across the board on Yahoo, FanDuel, and DraftKings. I like getting to Draymond today.
Nice. So we're on the same page there. And it's a good one where if you miss on, you get trolled pretty hard because people just hate Draymond and they're convinced that he's terrible at this point in his career. But I'm playing a bunch of Draymond today. I think he's a really good option. And we just had a bunch of super chats that came in. So let's answer these before we get too close to lock. Only 8 minutes to go, but Ryan and I are going to be sticking around for 30 minutes post-lock here, talking about So Rare, who is the sponsor of our show. Ryan Nelson wants to know, Ryan, who are your favorite plays on Yahoo? And he's saying it is Cam Johnson season.
Yeah, on Yahoo, you can certainly play some Cam Johnson. That's completely fine to get to. As I pull things up on Yahoo right now, I think my favorite player to go to on Yahoo is Jared Allen at $23. I think I like getting to him quite a bit. And $15 DeAndre Hunter makes a ton of sense, as does $15 John Collins. The thing with Collins where it gets really tricky is if Collins is on the court for 30 minutes, he's probably one of the best tournament players on the slate. We just don't know if Quinn Snyder is going to give him those minutes. So I think that the volatility and the range of outcomes for John Collins is really intriguing. So on Yahoo at $15, I'm going to get way above the field on a guy like him. So John Collins is someone to keep an eye on this slate because I think those minutes can fluctuate from anywhere from 20 minutes to 30 minutes, depending on his play and depending on the matchup, how Collins goes there. Because in the last playing game, Collins only played 22 minutes, which I found really shocking. But clearly it worked out as they got the win. So it's a couple of those Hawks guys, like I mentioned, and Jared Allen. is by far my favorite play on Yahoo.
Next question here is from King fucking Dash. He wants to know, who are 5 must plays for FanDuel cash games? So if I'm talking about cash games for FanDuel, and some of this is going to be dictated by ownership, but Keegan Murray's projected for a ton of ownership on FanDuel. I think that makes him somebody we should be playing in cash games. Just talked about Draymond Green. I think he's a really solid cash game option. Same goes for Kevin Huerter, Darius Garland, and I'll add Marcus Smart as well. I know he's somebody you liked on FanDuel, and I think he's a really strong guard option on FanDuel. So Murray, Draymond Green, Kevin Huerter, Darius Garland, Marcus Smart as my 5 for that. And then super chat from Taylor Ryman Schneider. Sorry if I mispronounced your name, but Taylor wants to know, are we avoiding playing Monk and Huerter together? I have more exposure to Huerter. I'm a little bit underweight to the field on Monk, but I'm not actively avoiding playing them together. Is it something you're considering?
No, I'm not actively avoiding that. I think it's an awesome game environment. Like the total indicates, Monk can certainly get hot. It's been awesome to see Malik Monk reunite with De'Aaron Fox and like channel their inner Kentucky days. They just need Bam Adebayo there, and that team is going to be pretty good. Pretty awesome what Monk has done this season. I'll be getting to some Monk, and like you said, I'm fine to getting to both Monk and Kevin Huerter. Kevin Huerter has been amazing. I really think the Hawks regretted trading King. I thought they could completely have used him with the DeJounte Murray offense, but that's neither here nor there.
Yeah, and just talking about the Kings really quick because we got more super chats to answer here. But the Kings, Kevin Huerter is one of my favorite players on the entire slate. I think he warrants a lot of exposure on DraftKings and FanDuel. And another thing too, not that we have to get too much into it, but yeah, I agree with you. I think the Hawks are going to regret that trade as well. I think he would have been huge for this team, particularly for the floor spacing. Rosso Music wants to know, who are my favorite plays for late DK tiers. So I read your question. I ran some lineups for it, and the late slate is only going to be 2 games, but tier 1 for me is Sabonis, tier 2 Fox, tier 3 Garland, tier 4 Jared Allen, tier 5 Kevin Huerter, tier 6 Ricky Rubio. Now getting back to the Kings, Ryan, we talked about liking Kevin Huerter. Both you and I are on the same page there. Who are the other primary targets you're getting to from the Kings?
De'Aaron Fox. I think Fox is going to play a lot more minutes. I think 38, 39 minutes, but you got to like Domantas Sabonis. I mean, Sabonis triple-double machine. He has been Jokic light to a T today this season. So I like getting to a lot of these Kings and a lot of this game because it's weird. I think some of these the Warriors sets are going to be under-owned, and I think a lot of these Kings guys are going to be under-owned. And maybe the field is overshadowing of how high this total is, but it's going to be fun targeting the 2 high total games on this slate.
And by the way, because people were asking about it before and he was officially listed as questionable, Isaac Okoro is expected to play and start today. So that was a little bit up in the air, but Isaac Okoro expected to be in. Are there any contrarian plays you like from the Kings?
Harrison Barnes. I think he's going to play like 36 minutes.
I agree.
And you're gonna happily take 25, 26 fantasy points from him at that salary. I like Harrison Barnes kind of across the board. I really like him, especially on FanDuel today. I think Harrison Barnes, just because of the minutes, certainly makes a lot of sense to get to. Did you know the Draymond Green and Harrison Barnes beef by any chance?
I mean, I know they played together in Golden State, but what is the actual beef?
Well, Harrison Barnes was really salty that he was actively recruiting Kevin Durant, and I think Harrison Barnes would have liked to stay, resign there. Re-signed there. And Harrison Barnes proceeded not to invite Draymond Green to his wedding. And Draymond Green is really upset about it because he invited the rest of the Warriors team besides Draymond Green.
Yeah, Ryan's always doing the deep dives. He's always got Ryan, people don't know this about him, but he knows all of the social media beefs. He knows all the Instagram backstories. Ryan knows everything that's going on between the players. Where do you get this information from in terms of wedding invites of players?
I mean, I'm like just all things basketball. I just like listen on so much random stuff throughout the days, and I was like, that's hilarious. And I think they've like lost all their friendship over that wedding invite, which is crazy because they won a championship together.
The other thing too, though, if you're Harrison Barnes, and by the way, is there anything else you want to add about the Kings or the slate before we get to lock? Because we got like 90 seconds.
No, I think that should be good.
All right. So, and by the way, Ryan and I are hanging around for the next 30 minutes. We're going to be going through all the teams. We're going to be talking about So Rare, who is the sponsor of our show today. If you guys haven't checked out So Rare, sign up using the link below. Because when you sign up using our link and you purchase 5 limited player cards over at So Rare, you get a 6-1 totally for free. And Ryan and I are going to break down all the teams here in a second, talk about how realistic we think their chances are to make a deep run in the playoffs, and then also maybe some sleeper targets from each of these individual teams. But if you're Harrison Barnes, aren't you understanding of the fact that even though I'm sure that he's very self-confident, don't you have to be like, I get it. They went with Kevin Durant over me. Doesn't that have to be something you come to terms with?
I mean, yeah, you definitely should come to terms with for that. Like, yeah, definitely Kevin Durant's like one of the top best like 10 players of all time. But he shouldn't be complaining. He got paid the bag by Mark Cuban, and he's going to get paid another big bag again. He's got a lot of. Being the most mid player there is in the NBA, he's made a lot of money. And the nice thing about Harrison Barnes is all the Kings players says he picks up every dinner tab. So he's a nice guy.
And I mean, for me, like if somebody was to come to me, if you were to come to me and be like, hey, just so you know, Greg, Nerdy Tenor's decided he wants to do DFS shows now, or like Chipotle Addict wants to do shows, I'd be like, I understand why they're replacing me. I could hold my own, right? I'm good at hosting the shows and I'm a profitable DFS player. I've had profitable years every year for 6 or 7 years in a row now. I would understand if I'm being replaced by Nerdy Tenor or Chipotle Addict. It makes sense. Come on, Harrison Barnes. Don't be mad at Draymond Green. Kevin Durant's better than you. It's not a big deal.
Yeah, let alone in the DFS streets. Yeah, I mean, it's tough for DFS players to know where they stand. But yeah, I mean, like you mentioned, you got to know your lane, especially in having the right perspective there, right? Literally in-house. Like, let's say Steve Buzzard wants to come on the show. Yeah, red carpet for Steve Buzzard. He's the hottest DFS player in the world. $250,000 a week. I mean, it doesn't get much better than that.
Not just $250,000 in a week, Ryan. $250,000 in 3 days. Steve won the big tournament on DraftKings 2 days in a row, if I remember the timeline correct, and then one on FanDuel a third day, which should be impossible, but just goes to show how good some of those guys that we have here that are doing the data for us. Because yes, Steve Buzzard, 3 MLB GPPs back-to-back days, fairly insane stuff.
No kidding. Yeah, I mean, I got to go to Bora Bora and come back and just win all this money. I mean, I went on vacation to Bangkok and I lost all my DFS mojo. So I had the complete opposite happen to me.
Yeah, that is true. You went on. You were how long were you there for? A month?
I was there for pretty much the start of February till the All-Star break.
And how? So, if people who don't know this, Ryan did travel, went overseas to Bangkok. If I'm not mistaken, you have family there, correct?
I went to India for the majority of the trip, but I went to Bangkok in between in between the trip when I was in India. Yeah.
What was the highlight of the trip? What's something about it that people maybe don't know
about Bangkok?
Yeah.
Oh, I think Bangkok's has the greatest rooftop bars in the world by far. There's a bunch of really fascinating temples there, but really cool rooftop bars, surreal views. I think rooftop bars are my favorite type of bar to go to. And Bangkok for sure had the best ones in the world by a country mile.
Bangkok's strong. So
there are a lot of other things you could do in Bangkok that we shouldn't touch on this stream. Yeah, you can have a good time in Bangkok.
I hear you. I understand. Let's do our playoff preview now. And this is sponsored by SoRare. And the way that these SoRare playoff contests work, you're trying to target players that are good fantasy producers, but also have the potential to play deep into the playoffs. So first to start, and I think I know your answer is going to be, Ryan, who is your pick to win the NBA championship?
The Phoenix Suns. I was trying to find some odds to get 16-0 Phoenix Suns run. I don't think we've seen everyone see the Suns play together, but in those 6 games, they're elite. They're not as good as obviously the 16-17 Warriors. I think that's the best basketball team of my basketball lifetime. That's post 2000. But if they're going to go on to win the championship, they should be at least in the top 3 basketball teams post 2000. I think they're elite.
And something else about them too, while they're so set up well for the playoffs, is they don't have a lot of depth deep in their bench, you don't need it if you could play Kevin Durant and Devin Booker 40 minutes per game each. So
I still think their depth is fine. I think it's serviceable, right? I think Biyombo can handle some minutes at the 5, but TJ Warren he's capable offensively to take over a whole quarter. Like, he has that within him. Cam Payne's been kind of out of the rotation. And Terrence Ross is a solid veteran who can shoot the 3, and that's kind of all you need in this day and age in the NBA. You need guys who can just shoot the bucket from the outside. And they don't need to, if they're like, if the bench is going to be like an average -3 or 4 in the second unit, there's never going to be a minute where at least one of Paul, Booker, or Durant are not on the court, and they'll be just fine. It's going to be a really good form of basketball down the stretch here for the Suns team.
Yeah, and if we're talking about players you might want to get for so rare, one thing too, like Kevin Durant is priced down a little bit because he wasn't playing every game down the stretch of the season. And the way the so rare pricing works is it's just that your salary is your average of your last 10 games played. So I think Kevin Durant's one of the better stars that are available on so rare. But because you just said you think the depth is maybe a little bit better for the Suns than what a lot of people think. If you were to pick a role player from the Suns that you think people should keep an eye on for that could show out in the playoffs, who is it that you would land on?
Yeah, I'm going to go with TJ Warren. They at first, when they traded him, he was not in the rotation. Now Monty Williams has been playing a bit more, and he just has the capability of just getting you points. He's certainly the type of role player. He could channel like the Cameron Payne run that Cam Payne had when Chris Paul got hurt 2 years ago. I think TJ Warren is a very solid offensive player, but obviously lacks defensive skills. That's the reason why he doesn't play consistent minutes. Yeah, I think it's going to be TJ Warren.
Okay. Yeah, that would be an interesting one. I'm going to lean with Cam Payne, right? I think that he's somebody who we've seen he's somebody who we've seen play extended role for the Suns in the playoffs before. Now, some of that was due to injury. We've seen Chris Paul get hurt in the playoffs. We've seen Devin Booker get hurt in the playoffs. It does seem like a guy who the Suns don't have an issue leaning on in some of those big games. So that's going to be my sleeper pick for the Phoenix Suns. And we'll do this for every team, just going through them. And let's actually do it conference by conference. And so we'll start by talking right there about the Phoenix Suns. We've covered them, but the number 1 seed in the West.
I'm going to interrupt you. I also want you to hear. I want to hear your predictions. We should give series predictions for each as well. I think that could help just to talk some basketball.
And predictions in terms of who I think is going
to win the series.
Each series? Yeah. I'm going to go Suns over. I'm going to definitely go with the Suns over the Clippers, particularly because I don't think Paul George plays this series.
Suns in 4. They also said Marcus Morris is back in the rotation, so I haven't been. I'm even more sure now Suns are going to win in 4. So look, Kawhi Leonard is filthy. He's good enough to win a game. But without Paul George, they're going to be cooked. I mean, it would have been awesome if Paul George was healthy. That's like an NBA Finals type of matchup if George was healthy. But with no PG-13, Suns in 4.
And then just so we're covering the other side of the series too, when it comes to the Clippers, assuming Paul George is out, I don't give them any really realistic chance to make a playoff run. Are you on the same page there?
With the Clippers?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they're going to need an injury to happen. It's fun to see Russ play KD in the playoffs. I really wanted that to happen when they were at the Thunder and Golden State. It kind of feels weird now. One's in the Clippers and one's in the Suns. Crazy how the basketball landscape has changed so quickly. But yeah, they don't really have a chance. I mean, it's going to be a miracle if they pull off this series win. I think the Suns are -600 to win the series against the Clippers. Which is crazy. Clippers were one of the most favorite teams, one of the top favorite teams to win the title this year. With the injury to Paul George, it just sucks. This Clippers team never can stay healthy.
Any sleepers you like from the Clippers? You don't have to pick one if you don't think there is a fantasy sleeper.
Terrence Mann.
Same.
I think Terrence Mann makes a lot of sense. There's definitely a pathway where he can play a lot more minutes, but he might be the sleeper. But no one else. I guess Marcus Morris being in the rotation automatically just makes him a sleeper. He might be playing a little bit more minutes just to guard Kevin Durant. I think that's why he's going to be in the rotation. But that's really about it. Remember, at one point, Marcus Morris called himself the LeBron stopper. He's not stopping anything anymore.
PJ Tucker's been the LeBron stopper. You know who's the most ridiculous stopper of our lifetime? Remember when Matthew Dellavedova was considered the Steph Curry stopper?
Yeah. It's so funny story you brought him up. J.R. Smith was on a podcast with J.J. Redick. Matthew Dellavedova literally died in that series. That he would like get like IVs and like go in like an ice tank after each game. But he got a lot of respect, and based on that finals performance, that's why he's still in the league, and that's why he's still with the Kings with Mike Brown, I think.
Interesting. I do forget. I see him come on the court every once. So I was like, oh, right, Matthew Dellavedova. He's somebody who exists. And then I kind of forget about him again. But let's talk about the rest of the Western Conference now. And let's talk about the number one overall seed, the Denver Nuggets, who I think are very live to win the West this year. Shouldn't come as a shock. I mean, they're the number one overall seed. If you had to say who's the second most likely team, in your opinion, to win the West behind the Phoenix Suns, would you say it's Denver, or would you lean with a different team, Ryan?
Man, I'm so happy for this Nuggets team. I've been rooting for a lot of these guys for many years, and I think it's all coming together. I think the Nuggets should be the second favorite team. It's going to make for an amazing potential second round matchup with Nuggets versus Suns. That's going to be really fun to watch. I think just a lot of talent on both sides of the ball there. It's going to be great to see there. In terms of so rare purposes, I'm more inclined to if I were to play one Nuggets player in so rare, it's going to be Jamal Murray. I like going to ball handlers in DFS fantasy purposes in playoff settings. We see a lot of isolation ball that happens down the stretch here. Sure, the offense runs through Jokic, but don't forget Jamal Murray. Last time we saw Jamal Murray, I believe in the playoffs, was in the NBA bubble. Correct? Yeah, NBA bubble, because he tore his ACL the following year. And if you remember what Jamal Murray did in that playoffs, he shocked the whole world. They beat that Clippers team. Obviously, they won 7 games against Utah, and they almost squeaked out a closer series against the Lakers if Anthony Davis doesn't hit a buzzer beater. But I think Jamal Murray looks like an awesome scorer play. I think he's going to have a really big playoffs, and they're going to need him arguably to be the best player on a lot of the games they play. So, yeah, I'm a big Jamal Murray fan. Yeah, shout out to producer. Murray averaged 26.5 and in that playoff run that they had in 2020. And he also had around 7 assists as well. So he looks like a great option for Sorare.
MPJ for me, Michael Porter Jr. We've seen him play considerably better when Jokic has been on the court alongside him. And I think Porter, there's still a lot of latent talent there. And he's actually healthy now, right? We haven't seen a lot of Michael Porter Jr. healthy the last couple of years. He is down the stretch of the season. So I'm going to be going Michael Porter Jr. as a little bit of a sleeper option here. Got a super chat from Ricky Molahan who says, do you guys really think that all three of Durant, Booker, and Paul could stay healthy throughout the playoffs? I have no clue. I do think that's the biggest risk to this team, though.
Definitely. I think I might do something fun. I think I might bet $100 on their future every day of the playoffs until they get eliminated. So a little dollar cost averaging with the futures market. I've never really bet futures. I know that's your forte. But, man, this Suns team should not lose. This might be the biggest disappointment of Chris Paul's career. If he loses in this type of setting or gets hurt, he's just cursed. He just has some curse that just sucks.
The curse is that he can't stay healthy. It's hard for him to stay healthy over the long course. So we'll see. I can't guarantee health, but I think it's more likely to happen than not. I think the injury risk is maybe a little bit overstated. The Nuggets are going to be playing the Timberwolves in the first round. Do you have the Timberwolves any realistic chance to make a playoff run?
They could win a game. Anthony Edwards is certainly good enough, and Cat is certainly good enough to win a game, but no realistic chance.
I kind of liked them until they had the McDaniels injury is massive. I think that's an issue. Whatever's going on in the locker room seems problematic. So I think you could say they should have shorter odds than the 200-1 that's out there for them to win the championship. But it's not a team I'm as high on now as I was a couple of weeks ago before McDaniels got hurt.
I think you bring up a great point there with the McDaniels thing. He's such an elite defender, and he thinks he's the best defender in the league. And you don't get many guys just saying they're praising their defensive talents. He's really good defensively. There's no denying that. They're going to miss his presence in his rotational run. I mean, he was playing a ton of minutes, and Torian Prince, Nickeil Alexander-Walker are just not going to be able to fill that on the defensive end whatsoever. Kyle Anderson has been playing way above expectations, it feels like, but he's been really good. And I got to give credit. Chris Finch is a hell of a coach. I know people don't like when he's like the Minnesota like health injury report all the time. That's not his thing, but Chris Finch is a really, really good coach. He can certainly coach out a win against this loaded Nuggets team for sure.
So let's talk about the 2 seed in the West, the Memphis Grizzlies, who are going to be taking on the Lakers. And about as closely lined as I could ever remember a 2-7 seed series. We had the Grizzlies opened up a -130. They've been bet to a -140 favorite now. Who are you picking to win between the Grizzlies and the Lakers? I'm still going with Memphis.
I'm going with Lakers in 6. Yeah, I got Lakers in 6 in that one. I think it's going to be an exciting series. Villain boy Dylan Brooks versus LeBron James. I got Lakers in 6. I think LeBron James and Anthony Davis are playing really good basketball together. As much as not as good as they were playing in the bubble together, but they're figuring it out. And I can argue the 2 best players on the court are LeBron James and Anthony Davis whenever on there. I know John Morant's really good, but he's not better than both Anthony Davis and LeBron James, in my opinion. So when you got 2 of the best players on the court in the series, you should win the series. So that's why I'm going with the Lakers.
One thing I think is pretty funny is I've seen a lot of people saying that the Suns have all this injury risk. Why is it not being brought up with the Lakers? Who has more injury risk than the Lakers heading into the playoffs? We haven't seen LeBron and AD stay healthy for a long stretch since they won the title in the bubble. So I think there's more injury risk with the Lakers than people are making it out to be. I'm going to be siding with the Grizzlies. Is there a sleeper pick you like from the Lakers, considering you're a little bit higher on them than me?
In terms of role player?
Yeah.
So much usage gets soaked up between LeBron and AD. I can certainly see Dennis Schroeder playing a bit more at times than usual, maybe soaking up some of Austin Reeves' minutes. So I'm going to go with Dennis Schroeder. But the real sleeper is I don't understand why they don't play more Malik Beasley. Malik Beasley is a killer three-point shooter. Should fit right in. I don't know. Maybe Scottie Pippen Jr. told something to Malik Beasley and he's just got in his head.
So more of the Instagram and more of the NBA drama from Ryan, who I found out that Malik Beasley is what's the backstory again? He's dating Malik Beasley dating Scottie Pippen's mom.
Used to date Larsa Pippen before Larsa started dating Michael Jordan's son.
There we go. So some of the NBA drama backstory. For me, my sleeper from the Grizzlies, Xavier Tillman. There are so many front court players out for Memphis heading into the playoffs. No Steven Adams. He's done for the playoffs. No Brandon Clark, torn Achilles. I think they're going to be really relying on Tillman, particularly in this series. So he's somebody who I like as a sleeper pick to have fantasy relevance through the stretch here for the Memphis Grizzlies, Xavier Tillman. Now let's talk about the Warriors-Kings matchup, and it's a tight one. We do have, at least for game 1, the Kings are slight favorites over the Warriors. Warriors favorites win the series. Who are you picking to win this one, though? I think you're muted. Is Ryan muted, or could I just not hear anything, Jacob? Okay, sure. So it seems like Ryan was either frozen there or some other issue with Zoom going on, but no big deal. I'll talk about the Warriors King series, and I'm a little skeptical of the Warriors just because they. Okay, we're good to go now. Okay, no big deal. So when we're talking about the Warriors and the Kings series, the one thing that gives me a little bit of pause when it comes to the Warriors is that they were not a good road team this year. And they're also not going to have home court advantage throughout the playoffs here because they didn't have the best regular season because some of those road struggles and the injuries to Steph Curry being the number one issue. So I do think that the Warriors win this series. I think they're primed to potentially make a playoff push. but I don't give them quite as good of odds as the Suns. I don't give them quite as good of odds as the Nuggets. Those are the two teams that I prefer odds-wise over the Warriors to make a playoff push. So I'm going to take the Warriors to win the first series of the playoffs, but I think that there's more potential for an upset and for the Warriors to get knocked out early than a lot of the public realizes. A lot of that because, like I said, the Warriors not having home court advantage. So a little skeptical from that standpoint. If I'm going to go for a sleeper from the Warriors, though, I'm going to go with Kevon Looney. If you guys remember last year in the playoffs, Looney played a really big role for the Warriors. He played extended minutes, played the best basketball of his career. I wouldn't be surprised to see Golden State lean back on Looney, give him extended minutes, and lean on him a little bit more. Is Ryan back with us now, Jacob?
I'm back. Yeah. Can you hear me?
Back.
Yes, sir. I heard you said you like the Warriors to pull the upset.
I mean, they're pretty big sportsbook favorites. So it's seeds-wise upset.
Yeah.
So it's I'm picking the Warriors to win, but I think the odds are not indicative of how live an upset could potentially be here.
For sure. No, I certainly think like the Kings can certainly win the series. There's that can certainly happen. A little bit more than the odds probably indicate, I think, as well. But I do have the Warriors in 6 in terms of just I think it's going to be a great series back and forth in terms of just offensive explosions on both ends. And I think you nailed the sleeper call. I think Kevon Looney makes for an outstanding sleeper. And the other guy, who I guess I don't know if he's a sleeper, would be Klay Thompson. I think Klay Thompson, if we get another game 6 Klay, he's just going to erupt.
And then as far as the Kings go, do you have a sleeper you're looking at from Sacramento? It's a team that when I was doing some playoff best ball contests, I didn't really heavily target the Kings because, like I said, they're a 3 seed. I think they're live to beat the Warriors, but I find it unrealistic they would go deep into the playoffs. Do you see the Kings potentially making a long playoff push? And is there a sleeper you like here?
So if they beat this team and they get a Lakers matchup, it'll make a very intriguing matchup against the Lakers. I think they can certainly give the Lakers for a run for their money. But it's just that I feel like the Warriors have just had their number for so long. That's why it's been a great story. And I think they're pretty much going to be cooked after this. But in terms of sleeper, in terms of Sorare purposes, it's going to be Harrison Barnes. I think Harrison Barnes is going to be asked to play 37, 38, 39, 40 minutes pretty often. I think those minutes, I'll take those minutes in the playoff setting of the 6 games. Potentially, I'm thinking it goes 6 games. It could go longer or shorter, but those minutes will add up for Harrison Barnes, in my opinion.
So let's move to the Eastern Conference. And I do think there's 2 teams, the Bucks and the Celtics, that stand out above everybody else. I think these are pretty clearly the 2 best teams. Do you see it the same way, or would you add the 76ers or anybody else into the elite echelon of the Eastern Conference?
No, I think the Bucks are actually in their own tier. Depending on Chris Middleton's health, if he's healthy, they're in their own tier. And I think then it's going to be, I think the Celtics, and then the Sixers aren't that far behind. I know the Celtics have had their number, but I think they're a little bit more closer in terms of like getting that long run than people think. So I just think the Bucks are just elite. They're in their own league in terms of like in the East. They're on their own island. I think there's a big gap between the Bucks and the Celtics, in my opinion, but we'll see if they match up and how that will end up.
Yeah, I don't really give the Heat much of a chance to win that series against the Bucks. I know we've seen it in the past, but it was in the bubble. There were some fluky circumstances. Giannis also got banged up in that postseason. So I don't really give the Heat a realistic chance to win in the first round of the playoffs. Do you see that as a potential upset?
No chance. I don't think they really have it.
And then do you have a sleeper from the Bucks? Because I don't. The problem is that this team has been playing shorthanded for so much of the season, and now we're seeing them get healthy for the right time of the year. I'm assuming that Chris Middleton is going to be fine for the playoffs. With that in mind, maybe we could say Chris Middleton's a sleeper. Maybe people have forgotten how good he is. But I don't see a role player really stepping up and playing big for the Bucks. I think it's going to be Giannis, Drew, Middleton, Lopez. How do you see the Bucks and any fantasy production in terms of a potential sleeper?
We'll see if Bobby Portis potentially could close a game or two in this Heat setting. Unlikely, but Middleton probably the sleeper just because he's been hurt for so long, and I don't think people realize how good Chris Middleton is when healthy. So Middleton is someone we should be targeting not only in Sorare but DFS and props. I think when they will be playing. So I like going to Middleton. Hopefully he stays healthy. I think they beat the Celtics last year if Chris Middleton stays healthy. I mean, they barely lost that series. If Grant Williams doesn't just go berserk, I think he went 7-7 in Game 7, and we haven't heard from Grant Williams since. So just kind of what happened there. So yeah, I think the Bucks should pretty much steamroll through the East, barring any unforeseen injury.
Interesting. So I think I would actually favor the Celtics in a series over the Bucks, but it would be very close because I do really like the improvements the Celtics have made. Not to mention also, if we're looking at the series last year, I know Middleton was out, but Robert Williams wasn't totally healthy. He makes a big difference. And they added Brogdon in the offseason. Brogdon also makes a big difference. So I think the Celtics, that and Jason Tatum's a better player this year than he was a year ago. Jaylen Brown is. So I think it'd be a competitive series. I would lean towards the Celtics, but either of them, I think I wouldn't be surprised if either of them win the East. I would be a little surprised if anybody who isn't the Bucks or Celtics wins the East. Do you give the Hawks any chance to beat Boston? I think this is the most lopsided first round series.
I think the Hawks can win 2 games. I think they can win 2 games against the Celtics team. I give Quinn Snyder a lot of credit as a coach, and I think Snyder can drop a pretty good game plan. The one things I do think the Celtics compared to last year, I think Missoula really struggles to draw good ATO plays compared to Ime Udoka, and that will matter in crunch time. While Quinn Snyder, he's been a solid coach for a very long time, and I think he has the coaching edge. It's tough to give up 2 whole wins in terms of coaching edge, but we've seen the Celtics team sometimes come out flat, and I think that they can certainly lose 2 games for sure.
And then for me, as far as a sleeper from the Celtics, I'm going to go with Robert Williams. He's not somebody who's overly expensive on Sorare. I'd mentioned that I think his minutes are going to be ramped up. So I don't have a sleeper from the Hawks. From the Celtics, though, I'm going with Robert Williams. Do you have a sleeper from the Celtics?
The one thing we didn't touch on, Greg, is Jaylen Brown is coming back from an injury. He busted his hand watering flowers. He broke a vase on his hand. So that is definitely an injury that we missed on touching on. This is his first game back from injury. So I wanted to make sure the audience knows that he's coming back from some sort of hand injury. He cut it up. He had a pretty big cast on his hand. So I don't know how much that's bothering him. And you said your sleeper for the Celtics is?
Robert Williams,
Yeah, I agree with that. I think I'm pretty much stepping stone. I think the other guy for me would be Marcus Smart. I think Marcus Smart will play much better than he has in the regular season. On the Hawks side of things, my sleeper over there would be DeJounte Murray. I guess if people don't think he's going to play much, but I think DeJounte Murray is someone I think should perform better in terms of rates perspective and fantasy production in the playoffs in the regular season.
And the other 2 series we have next one to talk about is the 76ers and the Celtics. By the way, the game has started. The Sixers are up 14-13 on the Nets midway through the first quarter. Tyrese Maxey, the standout fantasy producer to this point. And Tobias Harris also off to a decent start for the Nets. Mikal Bridges at 6 points in the first 6 minutes of the game. Do you give the Nets any kind of chance to beat the 76ers? They've been really inconsistent, right? Sometimes the Nets look good against good teams, then they look terrible against bad teams. I like the Nets for the future. I think they've done the best they possibly could to rebuild considering the circumstances they were in, but I don't think this is going to be the year for them.
No. I think seeing Mikal Bridges did what his run he had post trade deadline, very, very impressive. Obviously came down back to earth here. So I'm skeptical about this Nets team. They should get stomped on by Joel Embiid, but they've been sneaky. They've been like a 500 team since the trade deadline. They've not been that good. So they have some pieces. They have some draft capital. So we'll see what the Nets look like down this in the future, but not this year. They have some time to grow and get better.
I'm going to cheat and say my sleeper from the Sixers is Tyrese Maxey because he's off to a really good start in the first quarter of this game.
What's a really good start in the first quarter?
I think we were 6 minutes into the game and he has 5 points, 2 rebounds, an assist, and a steal.
Okay. That's a really good start. You're cheating there. There's no real sleeper on the Sixers, right? I guess Tobias Harris, because he's going to be on the court for a lot of minutes.
Yeah.
not do much, but I guess Tobias Harris.
PJ Tucker knocked down a shot, by the way. I know before you were talking about PJ Tucker, you think he makes a couple of shots. Guess what? Corner 3 for PJ Tucker on one of the first possessions of the game.
All we need is one more point. And
Yep.
PJ Tucker can certainly end the game with 3 points. But I like my chances of getting that 4th point or higher with at least 3 more quarters to play if this game stays close.
And one more super chat here from Corey Bomber just left it. He said he took down all of the single entries under $12 last night. Good looks. Congrats, Corey. Love to see that. Clay, Horford, Looney, or Mitchell, Jalen Johnson, Okongwu on DK. That is Clay, Horford, and Looney for me.
Yeah. Clay, Horford, and Looney. You nailed it. Yeah.
Hard to play Jalen Johnson and Okongwu, especially together in large field tournaments on DK today. Final series, Cavaliers, Knicks. They're going to be playing game 1 later on in the day. Especially with some of the uncertainty of the health with Julius Randle, I have to lean towards the Cavs in this series, and pretty significantly. I actually think the Cavs, if I bet one series price, it probably will be Cleveland. Mm-hmm. And one thing about the playoffs, the main way we see teams improve is they just play their core guys more minutes. That's one thing that hurts Tom Thibodeau teams in the playoffs. There are no more minutes to give them. They've already played max minutes for the entirety of the regular season. He runs them into the ground. So I think that's one of the reasons why we've seen a lot of his teams burn out in the playoffs. I like the Cavs. I like the Cavs in general as a young team for the future. I don't think they're ready yet for a playoff push, but I'm picking them to win the first round.
Yeah, I certainly think they can win the first round. I like the Cavs to win the first round and pretty handedly. This Randle injury is I don't think he's going to be 100%. And like you said, I just think the Cavs have 4 of the best 5 players on the court at any given point. So they should take care of business.
Yep, I see it the same way. I think the Cavs win the first round. I think they win fairly comfortably. As far as the Knicks, I think Mitchell Robinson is a decent sleeper, really good fantasy producer. And I think they're going to need his size against the Cavs. So I'm going to go with him as a sleeper. If he avoids foul trouble, I think he could have 1 or 2 big fantasy games. Sleeper from the Cavs, it's tough. They're so deep. I guess I'll go with Karis LeVert. Just because if I had to pick somebody who could potentially play extended minutes in the playoffs, he'd be the guy that I'm picking there. But how about you? Any sleepers from the Knicks or Cavs?
RJ Barrett on the Knicks side of things, and on the Cavs side of things, sleeper. Jared Allen. I guess would that be considered a sleeper?
Sure. It'd be whatever we want it to be. They're going to rely on their big guys to play a lot of minutes there. Mobley, Allen, Garland, Mitchell. Hard to really find much wiggle room for other guys in there, which is how we end up with, like a min-price Isaac Okoro. People are just like, sure, I'll play a bunch of him today. But that does it for us today. Guys, thank you very much for sticking around and watching. I enjoyed our So Rare playoff preview. If you guys haven't signed up there, use the link below. You purchase 5 limited player cards, you get a 6-1 totally for free. And if you guys haven't done it yet, do us a favor, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel, have a great weekend, and enjoy the start of the NBA playoffs.